Hello friends, my name is Karen Costa, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down the breakout room. So the reason I decided to create this video is that we had a very lively discussion recently on Twitter about breakout rooms, engagement, anxiety, purpose, intent, all kinds of great conversations coming out of this Twitter post that I shared. And this post was born of a professional conference that I attended. And I heard folks talking about how they had noticed that when facilitators chose to use a breakout room, that people were leaving the sessions. And this was a professional conference attended by faculty, administrators, instructional designers. And I found this so interesting. So some folks were opting not to use breakout rooms because of this. And in a lot of spaces, we've been talking about how great breakout rooms are and encouraging them for engagement. So some things came up in this discussion, and I wanted to share some thoughts with you. So before we say anything else, I want to remind you that your best is good enough. So everything that I share here, I hope folks will recognize that there's a lot of other things going on. Our stress levels are exceptionally high. Please take everything with a grain of salt and remember that your best is good enough. The other thing I'd like to share is something that I live by in my work, which is that the pedagogy should always come before the technology. So I never want the technology driving things. I want to make sure that I'm thinking of pedagogy first. And people always come before the pedagogy, right? So what I say to my students, what I say to the faculty learners that I work with is your well-being is my number one priority. And I mean that. People always come first. The other thing I'd like to acknowledge, and this is so interesting that this conversation came up in this way. We all have a lot more in common than we think. So many times the things that people complain about that students are doing, we see with faculty and administrators and instructional designers too, right? We're all doing these things. One of the other things that I noticed in this conference, no one had their cameras on. Now, you all know I'm a camera optional type of teacher, but it was really fascinating. We've seen a lot of folks saying, oh no, cameras have to be on for engagement. And here's all the folks who are the teachers and the leaders. They didn't have their cameras on, right? So we're all humans. We all have a lot more in common than we like to think sometimes. Another reminder before we dig into breakout rooms, all of this is connected, right? So I sometimes work with folks who want to talk about, why aren't students, for example, using the feedback I give them? And it's hard to talk about that unless we talk about the totality of the course, right? Everything is connected. And for me, the root of it all is classroom community. Everything is connected to the classroom community that we've built. So we can't talk about feedback unless we're talking about how well we've built and facilitated a classroom community. So as we're talking about breakout rooms, I think it's important to remember that it's all connected, just like in our bodies, it's all connected, and that we keep that in mind, that how we approach breakout rooms and how effective they are is related to all the other things in our courses and our teaching. One of my concerns in this conversation is that faculty will veer away from trying new things like breakout rooms, and I don't want that to happen. So I want to remind you all that the most beautiful, effective teaching often occurs when we take risks. Make mistakes. You've heard me say this before. The mistakes are the best part. Please keep making mistakes. The point of making mistakes is to learn how to make more. Modeling mistakes for our students is so important. You can't make an omelet unless you break some eggs. So don't let this conversation turn you off from trying new things, whether it's breakout rooms or something else. Please keep trying new things in your teaching. So a couple things to keep in mind that I think is really important. Again, going back to this idea that everything is connected. When you're thinking about whether or not you're going to use breakout rooms, well, let's start there. I'd like you to think about it. Don't just do it, right? Don't just do it because the tech is there. Think about your goals. What are your instructional goals? What are you trying to accomplish in that class or that workshop or that presentation? And what are your students' goals? What are they trying to get out of that experience or that workshop? So let's always keep our goals in mind before we decide to use the technology, right? And what are your alternatives? So one of the exercises I think can be really helpful for faculty is to talk about a learning objective and to list all of the many ways you could teach that learning objective, right? Seemingly infinite number of ways that you could teach any specific topic. So break it, if your goal is to teach, the history of medical neuroscience or whatever, you want to list out the many ways that you could teach that. And the many ways that you could engage your learners. There's so many ways. A breakout room is one of those options. So consider your alternatives. And a little note here, my favorite way to engage folks in live online sessions is not the breakout room, it's the chat. I'm a huge believer in the power of the chat. One of my goals is to become a professional chat hype person, if you know anyone who's hiring. So the chat is really awesome. So you don't have to use a breakout room. I use them very rarely and in specific contexts. If you're using them effectively, great, but there's lots of alternatives. Okay, so let's assume that you've done this foundational work and you've decided to use breakout rooms. Here are some suggestions I have. These are things I've been sharing with folks before this conversation, but they certainly were informed by that very lively Twitter conversation that I shared earlier. So what I'm hearing from folks is that going into a breakout room with people you do not know is incredibly awkward. So it is likely in most cases worthwhile that you give folks a chance to build community first. So if you are in a one-time session or a one-time course and people don't know each other, that might not be the best time to put people in a breakout room. I was put in a breakout room during this conference. I teach how to facilitate live online sessions. So I always become the one who says, hey, everybody, I think this is what we're supposed to do. And let's all introduce ourselves, right? That is something I've had to practice over years of doing this type of synchronous teaching. But I could tell that it was still very awkward for folks. And I've heard so many reports of people saying they get in those breakout rooms, people don't know what to do, it's awkward, nobody talks. It's likely worthwhile to invest time in building community first. If you're teaching a course that meets a few times a week, maybe you're not doing breakout rooms until the third week, for example. So honor the fact that it can be awkward to just throw people into a breakout room. This was something else I heard, and I hear this a lot. Sometimes I just want to listen. Sometimes I don't want to do active learning, right? There's a great book I can recommend to you all on this topic, The College Fear Factor by Dr. Rebecca Cox. I talk about that book a lot. So I heard this was a quote from faculty. Sometimes I just want to listen. And when I go into a breakout room, I feel like I'm forced to participate. Our students feel that way too. There's a tension here, and I don't have an answer for you because we know that the most effective learning happens when we are actively engaged, right? So I don't have an answer here, but I think it's important to recognize that sometimes folks just want to listen. And I mean faculty, and I mean students, and I mean admins, and I mean IDs, right? We all have this feeling. So I think it's important to name that and recognize it. A tool here that you could use is to check in with your learners and maybe have them vote if they'd like to go into a breakout room and consider your alternatives. Another thing I heard is that people are doing other things at home, or even folks who are in the office where many of us are still at home right now as I'm filming this. People are doing other things. People are eating. People are helping their kid with their homework. People are walking the dog. Earlier today, our smoke alarm battery reminder started beeping right when I was in the middle of doing something. Didn't expect that. And I had to stop what I was doing and deal with that. So putting people into breakout rooms when people are kind of doing other things at the same time that they're in these sessions or these courses can be a challenge. So being empathetic to that, I think, is important. And by people, again, I mean students, faculty, admins, you get the drill, right? We're all doing different things. A suggestion I have for you, disclaimer, I've only done this once, but I liked it. And I think there's some opportunity here. Try solo breakout rooms. So putting everyone in their own breakout room is a chance for students to practice, to take a break, to reflect. You can go into those breakout rooms to the extent possible, meet with students or learners individually, but I think there's some opportunity here, and I hope folks will try this and report back, but I'm hearing some good things about this. It addresses some of those other issues, but it also switches up the energy of the session. So this could be a win-win for us and for our learners. Be exceptionally clear about expectations for what you want learners to do in the breakout room. This is probably the number one thing I see that's an issue with breakout rooms. I hear so often, even when I've seen pretty clear directions about what folks want you to do, people go into the breakout room and come back and say, oh, we weren't so sure about what we were supposed to do. I've been in sessions where there were pretty good directions given and people still experience that jolt. I often say that going into a breakout room is like being sent into outer space. So if you think you're clear, you're not clear. You've got to be exceptionally clear about what you want your learners to do in that breakout room. So these are a few ideas for how you can be exceptionally clear. Assign leaders who will take the lead in the breakout room. Provide them with templates. So you might have seen, I've shared this, a lot of folks are sharing it. You can give a Google slide template and each group will work on a specific slide so that they know where to take notes, for example. And the last one is really important. Check for understanding before you send them out into outer space, out into the breakout room. So before you send them, because you're going to lose that group chat and you're going to lose that connection to all of them once they go into their breakouts, you've got to make sure that everyone understands. So one way to do that would be to access the participants tab. Have your learners check yes, the green yes, if they understand. Have them check no if they're still unclear, and then you can check in with questions. And time management comes into play here, right? You've got to allow yourself time to do that, but check that they understand before you send them out. Remember that there's no one size fits all. So within that Twitter conversation, there were a lot of folks saying that they love breakout rooms and that they've been using them effectively. So there's no one answer here. If you are using breakout rooms, if they're working for you and your learners, please continue to do so. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity here for us to consider some improvements that will benefit all of us. And in closing, we come back to this. Your best is good enough. So is theirs, right? So our students are dealing with so much. Faculty are dealing with so much. Admins, IDs, everybody. Do your best. And remember that we all have a lot more in common than we think when it comes to teaching and learning. So let's practice empathy and let's do our best to make breakout rooms and these other teaching and learning experiences the best possible experiences for everybody. Thanks for watching, friends. Take care.